Hello, I'm Dan Kozelko, a planning barrister representing Stop Lime Down in the examination of Lime Down Solar Farm. I want to talk today about the stage that we're at in the examination of Lime Down Solar Farm and why it matters to you. Lime Down Solar Farm is a 500 megawatt solar farm which is going to be examined over 6 months at the start of next year. The way that examination works is it's a decision at a national level. So this has been taken out of the hands of your council. In the examination, the examiners appointed by the Planning Inspectorate will come to listen to the views of the applicant, the council, and all of you, including Stop Lime Down, and decide whether the scheme should be given consent. Importantly, their decision is not the answer to the question, but is a recommendation that's then given to the Secretary of State, currently Ed Miliband. And so it's important to be involved now so the examiners know what locals think of this scheme and why this scheme should ultimately be refused. Now, the stage we're at the decision process is relevant representations, or you having your say. Now, what that means is all of you get the opportunity to put your first statement to the examining authority. And that's important. This is not a consultation anymore where you're speaking to IGP about the scheme. You're speaking to the examiners who will ultimately make the recommendation to the Secretary of State. And for that reason, it's important that you're involved now. It's also important because relevant representations is how you let the examiners know that you want to be involved in the examination. If you make relevant representations, you have an entitlement to speak at subsequent hearings, to be informed of what's going on, and to give evidence where appropriate so that the examiners know things about the scheme. And so, how do you make relevant representations? Relevant representations relate to a form that you can fill in on the Planning Inspectorate's website. You'll have to put various details into that, and then, importantly, you need to put some comments. Now, those comments should explain why this scheme shouldn't be consented, and they should be comments about this scheme locally. Why not this scheme? Why not here? And so it's your local view that's really important. Things like the human impact that you will experience are things that you can put in your relevant representation. Things like the recreational harm when you walk down a public right-of-way, or the views from your house or from the national landscape, or transport concerns about the number of HGVs that will be coming down the narrow roads around this area. There's no issue that shouldn't be included if you are concerned about it. But importantly, you need to explain why it shouldn't be this scheme and why it shouldn't be here. The question is not about disagreeing with national policy set by the government. The government have set a policy which says there must be some solar on fields in the UK. So the question is, why not here? Now, I said earlier that you'll have to put comments with your relevant representation. This should explain that you're objecting to the scheme and should also explain why. You need to provide a list or a bullet point set of examples of the things that really concern you. And you need to explain why they concern you. The examiners won't simply take "I object to the scheme" as the answer. If you have landscape concerns, say you have them and say that the view from your house will be affected by this area of solar, or that where you walk in the national landscape will look worse and be a place you no longer want to go. So that would be the advice. Make sure you actually explain what your view is. And we might suggest, for example, you provide a bullet point or a numbered or a lettered list of the various points you want to make. And overall, just make sure that the examiners don't have a question about why you are objecting to the scheme. The reason why that matters is because the examiners will look at this and decide how to examine the scheme based on what you've said. They'll take account of what everyone has said about the problems of the scheme and list that, include that in the timetable to understand the scheme better and to better recommend their position to the Secretary of State. And one final thought on relevant representations. The website uses a form that you fill in which compresses all the text together. And so it's really sensible when you're writing your relevant representations to use that bullet point or numbered or lettered list just so the examiners can easily understand the different points that you're making. If you don't use that kind of formatting, it'll become very hard to see where one point ends and another one starts. So you've made relevant representations. What's next? Well, relevant representations are the very first step in a long 6-month examination process. And if you don't make the relevant representations, then you lose the opportunity to be involved. Well, this is far from the end of the examination. The next steps will be the council producing its own report called the Local Impact Report, and then everyone who has made relevant representations having the opportunity to make written representations. And that is where you really set out your case. And that's an important thing that Stop Lime Down will be doing. We'll be building a team of experts to produce reports on all of the key issues that this scheme has. Those expert reports will be comprised together and using both planning experts and barristers to produce a covering report that goes in as Stop Lime Down's written representations. And it is that will be the foundation for the rest of the 6-month examination. Without those expert reports and without those written representations, Stop Lime Down won't be able to put its best foot forward. So that is why it is important. Expert evidence is key to an expert decision being made by the examining authority and ultimately by the Secretary of State. And we want to put the best evidence possible in front of both of them. You might have seen the number of documents that have already been produced by IGP as part of what's called the environmental statement. That sets out the actual main application, albeit lots of the documents will change over time. There's a lot of documents in there running to tens or even hundreds of thousands of pages. Importantly, your views still matter whether or not you've combed through every page of that, and we suggest that you still make your points that you want to make in the relevant representation, so the examiners know both what to look at from your comments, but also where to focus when reviewing the application. Another reason why you're making relevant representations is so that you can, in the future, speak at open floor hearings. That gives you the opportunity to address both the applicant, but also, importantly, the examiners, and say your piece. You won't be interrupted, you'll have a limited amount of time to speak, but you can say the things that really you think need to be said, and we'd invite you to go to at least one of those to say your piece. Now, an examination is a process, and the information that you put in your relevant representation might change, or you might think of new things that you want to raise. That's okay. Once you've made relevant representations, you'll have the opportunity in the future to make further comment, either in your written representations or through other processes, such as answering questions that are produced or commenting on the documents produced by the applicant. That's why relevant representations are important for a starting point. Now, you might have concerns about writing relevant representations at all, or think you can't write the right thing or not enough. Don't have that concern. It's far more important to express your interest to the examiners and say at least one thing. You don't need to cover the entire application. Just say the thing that matters to you. Now, you might be worried that by making relevant representations, you're taking too much work or overburdening yourself, but it's quite okay. Ultimately, once you've made your relevant representations, that can be it for the course of the examination. The examiners will have your thoughts and you will have been involved. The important thing is to be involved now and make decisions about how you want to partake in the examination later.